Saya bisa bicara bahasa Indonesian seperti ini, so mungkin itu lebih baik kita bisa ngobrol di bahasa. It's a very lyrical language. It's based. It's not atonal like most people think of Asian languages. It sounds more like Spanish, at least in my interpretation, my impression. This is the island of Java here. I lived in Yogyakarta, which is where Mount Merapi is erupting, and this is the island of Bali, which is the smaller island, and. In Java is where they do a lot of batik, which is the cloth, and this is batik on wood, for instance, and I think it's exquisite and soft and subtle and beautiful handcraft. It's taking a traditional handcraft that they do on cloth and bringing it into modern times. I initially went as a traveler, as I mentioned, in the mid-late 80s, and I was an artist, and I went to Bali in particular because Bali is Hindu, and their relationship between art and culture is extremely intertwined. A lot of people in their daily rituals do something artistic, being it music or dance or artistic interpretation, and I found it so refreshing after being an artist in the West, where it's so fragmented and you almost had to apologize for yourself for being an artist. So I went there as an artist to set up a studio, and it was extremely cheap as a backpacker to live as an artist. However, oils don't dry very well in the tropics, so it took me a long time to figure that out. In the meantime, I met someone serendipitously at the university who had a small grant to offer in something called Bali Human Ecology Study Group. I had this weird, obscure BA in human ecology, and he offered me a job. For 2.5 years, I worked at Udayana University, helping with some international work. They were looking at the relationship between sustainable development and tourism. And we did some international seminars and training along that line. And through that, I penetrated through lots of layers of culture where most tourists don't get to. I learned the language, I worked with locals, I stayed local. And in that time period, I also fell in love with Batik, which is the textile designs on their traditional fabrics. This is a deer antler from Newtown Square that my friend took bow hunting, and I brought it to a carver, my carver in Indonesia, in the village in Bali, in Tapak Siring, where they do carving, and this is the outcome a month later. This just shows the exquisite handcraft and hand skills that they have, that they can evoke such incredible images with an amazingly hard task. I've been living and traveling there since 1988. I was there solid for 6 years, and then I've been back in the U.S. living in Bali for 16 years, and lucky enough to be able to travel back to Indonesia every year. It's kind of like we joked saying you have a house at the shore, ours is just 15,000 miles away as opposed to here. And I spend about a month or 6 weeks at least there every year, going back to be with friends and family and to buy for my annual show, which I do. And the show is from Bali to Bala, and primarily is to support handcrafts and producers in Indonesia, but it's also to support nonprofits in Indonesia. So we always make the show focused around a fundraising event to support, unfortunately, the most current crisis that's happening. And the most current crisis that we're doing relief work for this show is the Mount Merapi eruption in central Java, which is north of Yogyakarta, and I lived there for 2.5 years, so it's very dear to my heart. So,
what's it like living there?
Java, as most people may be unaware, it is the largest Islamic country in the world. It's 225 million people, and the majority of them live in Java. Jakarta is the capital city, and Yogyakarta is the third largest city. And I have a map I can be happy to show you. It is an amazingly interesting, very diverse, very pluralistic country. And like many places, because it's been colonized for over 300 years by many people from nationalities to multinational corporations now, it's filled with tolerance and acceptance because they've learned to take in the good and not accept the bad. So I found, as an almost 6-foot-tall white Jewish woman living in the largest Islamic country on earth, extremely safe, well-loved, supported. I have deep, long-term relationships there, which keeps me going back for 25 years. And we have all sorts of things here at the show, and again, as I mentioned, it's all, the proceeds go back to support nonprofits in Indonesia, and I've been having the show for 14 years, and I've got a regular mailing list of customers who come in, and then I've been so welcome and overjoyed in Chestnut Hill to have so many people come in off the street, which is why we're in this beautiful, reusing the McGarrity building and opening it up to the public in this way.